This is the second video, setting up DNS records for email delivery. In the previous video, we configured postfix to send and receive email. In this video, we will set up the MX records, then look at examples of MX records, and finally check whether each of the targets of the MX records match A records or not. When configuring a properly set up mail server, there are a number of DNS records you need to set up in order to ensure that the system functions as expected. Some of these are defined in RFC 974, which covers mail routing and the DNS system. The main piece you need to understand is mail exchanger records. These records define how email destined to a given domain should be handled. Without an MX record being defined, email addressed to user@domain.com could be sent to the domain.com A record, which is often an HTTP server. For some smaller sites, this may be reasonable if their HTTP server is also an SMTP server, but that is not always the case. Rather than depending on the A record, you can instead use one or more MX records with defined priorities that point to A records, which may be in or out of the domain you're configuring. For example, your email could go to smtp.domain.com. Alternatively, if Google Apps handles your email, you may have multiple MX records within the google.com domain instead. After this brief introduction, we will see how you can start with it. Assuming you've already gone through the process of setting up your DNS infrastructure, or you're at least using your DNS registrar's infrastructure, then setting up the MX records themselves is pretty straightforward. The format of the records is domain TTL in MX priority mail server. As a shortcut, you can use @ as an alias for the zone you're using. For example, in the domain.com zone file, @ would symbolize domain.com. You may also choose to create MX records for subdomains, for example, test.domain.com, which would then be able to receive its own email to a separate server. Here you will see some examples of what those MX records may look like. You'll need to make sure that each of the targets of MX records have matching A records. These you can see on your screen, which is highlighted. Cool. Now let's see how it works. For a good example, you can look at MX records for www.google.com using these set of commands. In this example, you can see that email destined for the google.com domain can go to one of 5 hostnames specified in the MX records. The priority field right before the host name defines what order they will be tried in, from the lowest to the highest. Multiple records at the same priority would essentially be tried round robin. Nice. In this video, we set up DNS records for email delivery. In our next video, we will be configuring IMAP.